Thank you for joining us today as we have a brief overview of our migrant education program. The goal and the aim and the target for this program is to help us identify and recruit students who are eligible for the services. This is a federal program, so we do have to stay within compliance of the law. We do receive funding for this population of students. So I just wanted to give a brief overview for our staff members to understand the needs of these children, to understand who are these children and who are we supporting in this particular instance. So the purpose of the MEP program, or the Migrant Education Program, is to ensure that all of the students that are not the typical students, all of those that are eligible, and we'll talk about eligibility in a few minutes, we'll hear about that they receive free and appropriate public education. Just as any typical child receives, that they're getting the FAPE that they need, and that their migrant lifestyle, moving from one place to another, is not imposing any unmet needs or any unmet educational needs for them. And they're provided the supports they need to be academically sound, to achieve emotionally, social emotionally, physically, psychologically, that they have the well-rounded education that they need to be successful. And as we know, with federal funding, there are laws that come along with it, and there's compliance that have to be met. And this is the law associated with the Migrant Educational Plan, or MEP. So those students are typically, they have to meet the 3 criteria here. And I took out criteria number 2 because it does not really pertain to Camden County schools. But the child who is not older than 21, they receive the services. The child who has moved here or moved around the state or around the nation, because it's not a Georgia law, it's a federal law, within the last 36 months or the last 3 years because of agricultural work or because of fishing, or they moved to join their parents who are agricultural workers or who are fishers, and that's their occupation. And the reason for the move is based on their occupation. So those students are also eligible to be considered migrant children. And children who move due to economic necessity from one resident to another, or from one district to another, or from one county to another, but not because their parents want to move, but because of the agricultural work or the fishing work. That's the key to identifying them as migrant. And as far as identifying them, we don't identify them here in Camden County Schools. They're not found eligible based on our criteria or us actually going out and certifying them. There's a certification or a certificate of eligibility that is bestowed to the families who qualify. And the qualification is based on interviews that are conducted by trained personnel. The trained personnel are not here in Camden County. They reside at the Georgia Department of Education, and ABOC, that college also has trained personnel that partner with us here in Camden County Schools. They provide the supplemental supports that we'll talk about in a few minutes. They ensure that the child and the family have everything that they need. So they join together with us and other districts to ensure that these kids are having their needs met, whether it's academic needs, social emotional needs, whether the parents have needs for housing and things of that nature. We do partner because we're part of a consortium. Well, how do we flag these kids? How do we even know to report to the Georgia Department of Education that they are here, or to ABAC? Well, the way we do it is we provide an occupational survey to our parents as they're enrolling and registering their children back to school, or at any point in time when they're joining us. There's an occupational survey that's part of our enrollment process. The parents complete this survey, and once there are questions answered on that survey that may trigger our SIOs to say, wait, this child might qualify. They've answered yes to any of these questions that are on the survey, which is now electronic. It used to be a paper survey. The SIO will contact me as the federal programs director, and I will conduct an interview and communicate with the Georgia Department of Education to see if this child or the children or the family have been identified previously as being eligible for the services. That's the way we actually identify them here in Camden County Schools. And this is a copy of the occupational survey and the questions that are addressed on the survey. Once again, we have an electronic version that's embedded in our enrollment process, but they do answer these questions. And in the middle, you will see that there are 6 different agricultural types of economic needs or economic jobs that they might be fulfilling. If they check any of those, once again, that's a trigger and a target and a flag to our SIOs to inform me, and I will do further research and investigation and interviews to see if these families do indeed qualify. So what do teachers and school personnel, not only teachers, but our clerical staff, our custodians, our bus drivers, what do they need to know that are risk factors for our migrant students and our migrant families? One thing is they often live in isolation. If you can imagine moving from place to place, you don't really get a chance to meet a lot of people. So they live by themselves, they travel in groups by themselves, and they're isolated. They're separated from their family. They typically have the socioeconomic status that's a little more disadvantaged than others. So they're economically disadvantaged. Their educational background of the parents are not as high and maybe as sound because the migrant population, that's their lifestyle. So it is trickled down from generation to generation to generation. Moving, being transient is just part of the world that they live in. That's normal to them. So parents sometimes don't graduate from high school, and they have children who join us when they're not out in the fields working, and they may not graduate from high school. So it's cyclical, not having a very sound educational background. Then there are language barriers, and of course the graduation rate is low as well. So, what does the U.S. Department of Education say that are concerns? There are 7 concerns unique to these migrant children and their families. Once again, the educational continuity. They're moving, so there's no continuity. They might have standards in Georgia, then they're moving to Florida to pick some oranges, and then they're moving to California. So they move around a lot. No continuity with their educational plans. The instructional time, they need more instructional time. They need more one-on-one. They're not engaged in school. They have language barriers, or their language development is poor because of moving from place to place. And they need more educational support, not only at school, but in their home. Their parents may not speak the language. And that's why it's important that when we reach out to our parents, when we communicate with them in the language that they understand, so we can keep them abreast of what's going on with their child in school and make sure that we're building their capacity. They don't have a very sound health system because, as you can imagine, they don't have doctors. They don't have the same group of doctors from state to state. So there's no continuity in that aspect either. And they don't have access to services that they may need. Special educational needs, the students with disabilities, these students, because of the lack of continuity, they experience gaps in their learning. They don't accrue credits as a typical child may accrue credits. They have language barriers, and they're limited with their health care that they receive. So what types of supplemental supports? Remember, supplemental support is what we offer above and beyond what the typical child receives. So what types of supplemental supports might we help our students with migrant eligibility? Well, they'll need some classroom support. They might do pullouts, they might do push-in, they might need extra above and beyond what the typical child receives. We'll provide them with before and after school programs. Saturday schools, they may need specific summer school assistance. They may have one-on-one tutors. They may have tutors that go to their homes. We do provide that for our migrant families here. They'll have tutoring at home. They will have extra assistance through the ESOL program. So we will build their language acquisition through ESOL if they qualify, because your migrant does not necessarily mean that you receive ESOL services. They do have to qualify for that through a screener as well. We could help them with being prepared for college in hopes that there is enough support from state to state, from season to season, that they do graduate and attend college. So we can provide that support, and we can increase or we can limit the emergency health services, and we can increase the impact that they will receive from the healthcare services when they go from place to place. So these are some of the supplemental supports that the MEP program, once families are eligible, can receive. So we need to understand the impact, so, that poverty does have on our students and the learning gaps that they do experience from moving from place to place. We have to understand that, they have substandard housing, that they lack school materials, the family responsibilities are grave for these students. They may have to go out and pick cotton. They may have to, go on the fishing boats. So they aren't going to be in school. They're going to have attendance issues. Their nutrition might be lacking. Sometimes when they come to school, we're the only meals that they're getting in our school system. So we need to also monitor them, because their self-confidence and their self-esteem is going to be low. They don't have friends. They might look different because they don't have as, up-to-date clothing, or their clothing may be tattered. So these are some things that we need to keep in mind, and to ensure that we're preventing dropouts and monitor the credits at the high school to ensure that they're accruing credits in a manner that they can be successful and they can graduate. So these are some other things we need to consider as educators. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just invite you to contact me, Denise Cato. My email address is on this PowerPoint presentation. Feel free to contact me, contact your principals first, let your principals reach out to me if you find any concerns, if something triggers you to think that maybe we missed a student or a family that might be eligible and we didn't quite catch it. Contact your principal. Your principal will communicate with me, and we will ensure that the children have everything they need to be successful. I wish you and bid you a great new year, and a great start to the new year, and a great continuation of the new year. I'm looking and excited for some success this year that we had, not experienced during the pandemic. And I'm looking forward to great things for all of our families. Please feel free to email me if you need to, but please go through your principal. Thank you, and have a great school year.